Hi, this is Gail with Beaded Jewelry Diva, and today we are going to make a beaded bead. We are going to use bead embroidery. We're going to go ahead, of course, use our standard bead soup, a needle, a thread, and our secret weapon, a drinking straw. Yes, indeed. In addition to this, I will show you a few other beaded beads that I've made, and we'll talk about those and sizing and everything. If you like this video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more beaded bead videos, please give this a thumbs up and go ahead and leave me a comment about what kind of beaded beads you'd be interested in making. So let's go ahead and see how our drinking straw figures into making a beaded bead. Today's project needs the following. You will need some bead soup. I have all sorts of beadies in here, and you can see my bead soup video if you're interested in making your own. I am using for my beading thread Sono today. I thought I'd go ahead and try this out. I have a pair of scissors. I have some felt. This is just regular felt. It's the soft felt. Do not get the stiffened felt. I have a size 11 needle. You could use anywhere from 10 to 12 depending on what kind of bead you're using. And you are going to need a drinking straw. All right, that's what we need, so let's get started. I've cut a piece of my felt that's about a ½ inch wide by about 2 inches long. It doesn't have to be perfect, but do try to get relatively straight. I've got my drinking straw, and I am just going to wrap around. So it doesn't have to be super precise, but try not to be too sloppy. Okay, it's wrapped around, and I'm just going to take my needle and thread, and I've already gone ahead and put a knot in the bottom of my thread, and I'm just going to secure this. So I'm just making, stitches here and there to go ahead and make sure that this doesn't fall off. Well, there we go. So just do this a few times until you're all set up. I've gone ahead and you see that I've got all my little stitches in, and I don't need this whole piece of straw, so snip. And now I only have to work with a smaller piece. All right, so you have your thread all anchored in. You don't have any flapping in the breeze. And you're going to start this out with your standard bead embroidery. I'm just going to be picking up beads randomly, and I will be putting them in. So sewing them on, embroidering them. Now, one thing that you do want to be careful about is when you take your stitches. Now, I like to go ahead and take my stitches horizontally like that, because I don't want to catch the straw. It's not the end of the world if you do catch the straw, but do your absolute best to not catch it, because we want this to move back and forth, and you'll see why in later on. So just go ahead and do some sewing. As far as what kind of beads to use, it's really up to you what you decide. I have everything from size 11s to size 15s to 8s. I have some, let's see, triangle beads. I have probably some super unos, super duos, the kind of like the whole 9 yards. I'm going to go ahead and do some bead embroidery. I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you some tips for doing your bead embroidery. I've gotten a little further along, and I want to show you how I am tying off, because I am pretty much coming to the end of this thread. All I really do is I go through the stitching, or through the felt. I do not, again, I am not going through the straw at all, but I am just taking some random stitches. Now, do make sure that your thread doesn't show that you haven't caught it on anything, but I just go ahead and make the random stitches, and then when I am done, I'll go ahead, take my scissors, and okay, you can see that I've gotten a fair amount of this done. You can see that I've pretty much finished off one end, and now I'm going to show you how to finish off the ends by doing the other. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this down, and I want you to see, now here's my straw, and I'm just sliding it down just past the beginning. So it's just a little ways into there, and most of the straw is down here. So I'm going to take my needle, and I want to go ahead and put my needle so it's coming out of the center. And where you start doesn't really matter, but my thread is coming out of the center. And it's not horrible if you don't have it coming out of the center. I've just found it easier to do it this way, as far as being able to place the beads. Now what I'm doing is I'm just grabbing some random beads, and how many you grab is going to depend on how much room you have. Now I just grabbed 3 little size 15s, and let's see what happens. Now I'm trying to put my needle under this thread, and the reason I'm trying to put it under is because I'm going to be sewing in a counterclockwise direction, and so I want my thread pointing in the direction that I'm doing it. Well, I guess that's probably as good a way to say it. Okay, so you can see in an extreme close-up what it looks like. I've got my 3 little beads here, and you can see again I'm coming out of the center, and this time I'm going to pick up some size 11s. Now I tend to use size 11s and size 15s more than I do anything else for edges, but you know, there's really no rules in bead embroidery. Now it may look like this is pretty loose, and it might be, but every stitch that you take is going to tighten up the stitch right before it. Now here's a hint, and if you have some beads that are not quite right, they're just not working well with your particular bead, I usually pick them up first. That way they're kind of down in the hole. That way I can use the beads without worrying about it. So again, and you're just going to do this around the entire bead hole. You want to do this nice and snug. You want to keep the beads pretty well together, like you see over here. And if you have some spots that are missing, you can just go back in and fill them a little bit later. Filled in the end, and as you can see, there's not much left. I do have little blind spot there, but that's okay. I don't need to worry about that for right now, because I've got to do fill-ins, remember? So what I'm doing is I'm just going to put my needle back down through, so I'm coming kind of through somewhere in the middle when I don't throw my bead all over the place. All right, so I've got it like that, and you may have been wondering why I was doing this so densely here. It's because when you go ahead and string your beads on, when you're making this into a necklace or a pendant or whatever, you don't have such a huge bead hole, because you know, you don't, unless you're using leather or something like this, you don't need that big of a bead hole for your bead. So this goes ahead and closes it up some. All right, what I'm going to do, and you can see you've got some play in the straw. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the straw off, and this will allow me to put the straw inside. As you can see, it kind of cut off like this. I'm just going to take the other end and just poke it on down. Poke it down on inside. So my straw is in there. It's keeping it nice and firm. It's not going to collapse on me at all. So this bead is going to take a lot of wear and tear and punishment. So now I've got it this way, and let's talk about how to go ahead and cover spots, fill in spots, because at this point that's what you're going to be doing. One of my favorite ways of closing up a spot is to take 3 size 15 beads, and I've got my thread coming out right about here. I'm going to put my thread in right about at the same spot. and then just go through again, doing it horizontally. You're not going through the straw. And it gives me a little spot, and it kind of covers things up. Another way of going ahead and doing some cover-ups, and I see a spot over here, is to take, let's see if I have one of these small beads. It's kind of like a drop bead. And drop beads are great. They cover up a multitude of sins. So I've got my little drop bead, and that covers up more space than like a size 11 would. So what I'm going to do now at this point is I'm going to go through and do a lot of these 3 of the size 15s and move through the whole thing, and then we'll come back and finish up the other end, and then I'm going to show you some of the other beads that I've made in other sizes so you can get an idea of how big you might want to make your bead. So here it is, the finished beaded bead. You can see that I actually put in some flat triangles as well as some sequins, if I can find the sequins, but I use those as cover beads too. So you can use all sorts of beads to hide things that you don't really want seen. Now remember, we started out with this a 1/2 inch wide by 2 inches long. Well, now it is about 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch. So it's a pretty good size for a bead. And I think this is probably the perfect size to start out with. But once you've made a few of these, you can string them into a necklace or something. Let me show you some other sizes. So here's one that's slightly bigger. I think I started off with about 3/4 of an inch to begin with on this one. And you can see that the ends are flatter. What I do is I just do this. So if I can find the ends on this one, you know, I've done such a good job that I can't even find the ends. But what you can do is just do that, and it'll flatten the ends out more, so you can see that. So that flattens it, and if you want it rounder, just go ahead and leave it rounder. So this one's about it started out about 3/4 of an inch, so it's about an inch. So I've got some others. I've got some green ones, and some blue, some pink and purple, another one that's purple, and you can see that these are probably the 2 biggest. I think this one, let's see if we can measure it. This one is about 1.5 inches, so it's a good size bead. And then here's one that I started. I think I pretty much finished it, but I want to do another one. And you know what I want to put on it? Pearls. I want to put pearls on it and see what that ends up looking like. But a good idea for these beads to go ahead and use them on like a necklace would be to take some beads that are about, let's call them 16 to 20 millimeters, maybe some like nuggets or something like that, and string them between these. In doing so, you'll create yourself a nice necklace. And what I like to do is I like to do about maybe 10 inches worth, and then hook it onto a chain, and then, you know, clasp it, etc., etc. Now you could make a necklace out of this that had multiple color beads. Maybe you'd want to do like a rainbow effect. The possibilities are really endless with the beaded beads. Which one do you like best, by the way? Do you like the purples best? Do you like this big blue one? Do you like kind of the greeny ones? This autumn colored one, the smaller blue one, or the one that we worked on? If you have a favorite, go ahead and put down a comment. I'm just curious as to see which one you'd like best. Also, go ahead and give this a like, and especially if you want to see these made into a project. So if you'd like to see that, you know, go ahead, give it a like, and let me know what kind of project you'd be interested in. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's video about making beaded beads. I would love to have you visit me at beadedjewelrydiva.com. And if you don't already subscribe to my YouTube channel, I hope you'll do so. Meanwhile, this is Gail signing out saying have yourself a beautiful day. Bye.